though, with Ole Miss. And the more I looked at it, Ole Miss, the concern for South Carolina on defense is this. Ole Miss wants to run the ball. If you look at Ole Miss this year, in the 4 games they won before they ran into Kentucky, Ole Miss ran for over 200 yards in every game. Every game they ran for over 200 yards. In the Kentucky game, they ran for like 3.9. And they weren't successful running the ball. Ole Miss wants to, in a perfect world, run the football. They were even balanced in the Kentucky loss. I think it was 29 runs, 27 throws or something like that. But running the football is their bread and butter. Make no mistake, we talk about throwing it and Jackson Dart and Harris and big plays down the field and all that mess. But the root of this offense is spread you out and run the football. Mm-hmm. And so for South Carolina, they're as much as they want to rush the passer and they want to get after quarterbacks and they want havoc plays and all that, they're going to have to be disciplined with run defense, because if Ole Miss gets it cooking on the ground, they'll just keep turning and handing it off and turning and handing it off, and you have a long day of trying to chase ball carriers. So you got to be stout with your run defense. And you know their success rate against Kentucky was around I think like 45% on first down. They got at least 5 yards. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, what Ole Miss wants to do is they want to run the ball. Winning first down is huge in this game defensively, because you want to put them at 2nd and 9s and 2nd and 8s. If they got a lot of 2nd and 4s and 2nd and 3s, only that playbook's wide open, again, that's a long day for your defense. Because, yes, we saw Kentucky get pressure on Jackson Dart on Saturday.
Right.
But you know what else Ole Miss couldn't do? They couldn't run. Kentucky stuffed the run game and forced Ole Miss into some situations where Wildcats could get some heat on Jackson Dart. If you're South Carolina, you got to win first down on defense, and you've got to slow down that run game. And then you have your opportunities to be like Kentucky. But Ole Miss, I mean, we talked about this the other day, Tyler. Ole Miss still won the total yards battle, the yards per play battle by like 2 yards. Harris still caught, 75 balls for 7 million yards. Mm-hmm. So Ole Miss moved the rock. They just, once they got the ball in Kentucky territory, they didn't do what they were doing to the other 4 teams, scoring touchdowns.
Right.
So for South Carolina, you got to be disciplined up front. You just have to against this offense, because they want to run it. They want to run for over 200 yards on you. That's their goal. So that's a huge thing in this game, is stopping their run game.
And one thing that's going to be interesting to see, and I think we're going to get our first injury report today, is the status of Henry Parrish, because he was banged up in that game against Kentucky. He might have a concussion. Don't really know exactly, but they might have to go into the bench, Ulysses Bentley, Matt Jones, to get a little bit more out of their run game this
Or you
weekend.
might see a former Gamecock.
Or maybe, Rashad Amos. He's also on that roster.
It's funny. He's only got 9 carries this year. He's averaging like 8 yards a carry. That's what they do against bad teams. They just bludgeon them.
And that's something that I've kind of gotten a sense from reading and listening to the people that cover Ole Miss, is they're not using their running back depth as much as they probably feel like they should. Like Henry Parrish is getting over half the carries. And they feel like there's ability with these other guys to maybe do something.
Well, Trey Harris has gotten 40% of the completions at wide receiver. Our boy Trey has more catches than the next 4 or 5 guys combined, pretty much.
Let me do the quick math here. You would have to go down 1, 2, 3. That's 30, 35. You'd have to go down to
4 or 5, right?
Yeah, about 5 guys down on the list to get the combined total receptions to eclipse what Trey Harris has done.
They're throwing the rock to Harris a ton, and Parrish is getting over half the carries. And they have enough talent; they don't have to do that, Tyler. That's the ironic part.
Right.
There's enough depth of guys who can play, and they're just not utilizing them all. So we'll talk more about, obviously, this matchup with Ole Miss and South Carolina. Shane Beamer talking to the media yesterday. Shane had a lot of things to say about a lot of things. I think there's a couple of Juice Wells cuts we need to use in the next segment. The word association was classic. Cloninger did that, right?
Cloninger's got something in the works in relation to that, so be on the lookout with the Post and Courier, because he asked everybody, not just Shane Beamer, about, hey, give me a word association when I say Juice Wells. And
very interesting.
The answers were interesting.
Yeah, Very polarizing 2 years in Columbia for Juice Wells. So we'll play Shane, a couple cuts from Shane about Juice Wells, who, by the way, to be honest, on the field, I'm not saying he's a nothing burger because he had touchdown catches in the first 4 games.
Yep.
He had 0 catches with 2 or 3 targets in the Kentucky game.
Yeah, they threw it to him twice, and Kentucky had really good coverage on him, and he had one of them went down as a drop. But considering the fact that he would have been your number 1 guy here, he's definitely maybe third fiddle at Ole Miss.
Yeah. So we'll get in a little Juice Wells conversation. We've been avoiding that most of the week, but we'll get into it a little bit next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're rolling up until 3 here on the game. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head as we roll till 3. And, of course, we're always sponsored by our buddies at the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Thanks for hanging out with us in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, on the Game TV. Maybe you've snagged the Game app from Google Play or for your iPhone or whatever the case. However you're digging us, we appreciate it. All right, so Juice Wells will be showing up at Williams-Brice on Saturday. And, I mean, the conversation is still there, but it's not like a hot topic of conversation. Because let's face it, Juice Wells right now is the third leading receiver on the Ole Miss team. Trey Harris is the dude.
Yeah, if he was putting up Trey Harris numbers, this would be an even bigger deal.
Right. I mean, Wells is coming off a 0-catch game against Kentucky. And so it's, Juice Wells, yeah, that's right. And don't get me wrong, it won't be Juice, they'll be chanted.
Yeah, it's not the leading story coming into this game like we maybe thought it could have been in the offseason.
Right. But it is there. And so Shane Beamer was asked about Juice Wells yesterday. And we'll start with the cut 9, Tyler, the emotions around Juice Wells coming back to Columbia after leaving and transferring to Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think that's every game. You want to make sure you play with great poise, and they've got a good football team, and I know we're going to get the best version of Ole Miss, and what we're focusing on is just getting the best version. They get the best version of South Carolina, and they got a lot of really good players on offense, and Juice is a good player, but when you sit there and watch number 9. The other receiver, they targeted him 15 times Saturday. So we better be, not caught up in one player. We better be aware of him, and then we know what a weapon the tight end is. And then 19, the slot receiver, Caden Lee, we recruited the heck out of him, and he had a lot of targets on Saturday when they threw the football. The running back had a lot of targets in the passing game. So for us, it'll just be they have a lot of really good players that we have to prepare for, and on all 3 phases. And it's always about, playing smart football and poise and doing our job, especially when you're in, chaotic environments like our stadium is going to be on Saturday.
That was a nice way to put it. And it's true, though. I mean, Juice Wells is going to show up, but right now, the guy you got to focus on is Trey Harris. 40% of the completions are to that guy. Also, you got to worry about their run game. And there's a lot of things to worry about with Ole Miss's offense. And not to be mean, Juice Wells really isn't in the top 3 things you're going to worry about when it comes to Ole Miss's offense.
Yeah, and if you're successfully able to take away Trey Harris or at least limit him to, half the production he's been doing so far this year, because he's averaging over $150 a game, that Juice Wells has the capability of stepping up and really making you pay, because we've seen him do that against SEC teams before. So I think that's where the concern comes in. But again, he's not your primary objective when it comes to game planning against this offense.
Well, that's the problem with this offense. I mean, there's weapons everywhere. I mean, Shane brought it up. You got guys, you got weapons that are dangerous in the slot. You got a tight end that made a big play down the field against Kentucky. You got a running game that that's your number 1 priority, is stopping the Ole Miss run game. And they got multiple guys. I mean, the offensive line, they brought in a couple guys from UW who were part of a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. Now, do they have trouble against Kentucky in pass protection? Yep. Do they have trouble moving Kentucky in the run game? Yep. But the offensive line has got a reputation with some guys. It's not just one. I mean, you can't. Let's say you slow down Harris. They have other guys that if you're leaving the other receivers, including Wells, one-on-one with your DBs, that could be trouble. I mean, how are you going to match up? I mean, Demetrius Knight's been really good in coverage for South Carolina. Is he going to match up on the Ole Miss tight end who can make plays? What happens if Ole Miss decides they want to dust off their running backs in the passing game? They've done that in the past. They haven't done as much this year consistently, but they've done that. Also, it's so difficult to gauge anything, Tyler, because they played a bunch of before Kentucky.
Yeah, well, we're basically operating off of a 1-game sample size for the most part when it comes to Ole Miss. And look, Jackson Dart, his numbers are among the top in the SEC in just about every single major category. But I more zero in on what he did against Kentucky last week, because again, that's a better litmus test for what you're going to see against South Carolina.
So that's what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with a very talented football team who last Saturday played their first real game of the year didn't take their opponent seriously, and got beat. Let's just call it what it is. Nobody, I haven't heard anybody from the Ole Miss side go, yeah, we didn't take those dudes seriously. I mean, please, come on.
Well, and you have to think about this from the mindset of a 18 to 22-year-old. You're a team that was top 10 coming into the season. You're being told by everybody, man, you guys are a playoff team. You're gonna run through this schedule. Maybe you'll lose to Georgia or LSU, but other than that, you got this. It's gonna be a cakewalk. And then you run into a bare knuckle team like Kentucky that says, we got different plans here, and they punch you in the face a couple times. You're like, oh, wasn't expecting that.
Right, and that's what Kentucky does. I mean, that's their MO. They're going to be tough and physical, and you're going to be in a street fight. But if you're Ole Miss, you thought you were past that, right? You thought, you know what? We are so talented on both sides of the ball. We not got a bunch of dudes on defense. We've always had a bunch of dudes on offense with Lane Kiffin. We've solved our problem. We're ready now. We're ready for a brawl now. And you weren't. Let's just be fair. You weren't ready for a brawl. Now, you still should have won that football game on Saturday, even though you didn't take them seriously. You totally played Kentucky's game, but you still were in position to win the game. You get a 4th and 7 stop, which you should have gotten. You win the game. There were multiple opportunities when you were moving the ball, and then things happened to you where you should have had more points.
Well, let's just go over the last couple of minutes alone. You should have stopped the 4th and 7. That the statistical likelihood of that working was probably 1% or lower.
What a great throw, by the way.
Yeah, it was a great throw. And Barron Brown made a good catch, obviously.
And Brown got the bump on the DB before the ball got there. They kind of ran into each other a little bit.
Right.
And
yeah, that's what a lot of people with the Ole Miss side of things were saying. There was a push off that wasn't called there. Regardless, play happened. Okay, that happens. Gavin Wimsatt fumbles going into the end zone, ends up in the hands of their tight end, who just happened to stand there. All right, ball didn't bounce your way on that one. You still drove down the field, had a chance to line up for a game-tying field goal to send the game to overtime, and your kicker misses it. So there were opportunities there just in those last couple of minutes alone they couldn't capitalize on.
Well, the thing, too, though, I believe on that last drive, if my memory serves me, didn't Dart get hit by J.J. Weaver and fumble, but Kentucky was offsides?
I believe so.
Yeah. So it was a weird football game in those last few minutes. The last few minutes were crazy. But, yeah, I mean, a fumble, that's just the luck of hustle and the draw, right?
Yep.
And then the 4th and 7, you got no business getting beat on 4th and 7. And, look, there was contact down the field, but I'll say this again. When you are a handsy group of dudes in the secondary, you typically don't get a whole lot of benefit of the doubt. You just don't. You're lucky you got no call, right? Because if there's contact, there's a good chance they're whipping the flag out on you because that's all you do. So, look, it's a game that Ole Miss should have won. Even though they played Kentucky's game for 4 quarters, they got out-physicaled, they still, despite all that, should have won that game, and they didn't. So we'll see how they bounce back, if they bounce back. We'll go, about 3:30 on Saturday. We'll find out.
That's right.
We will find out what's up with Ole Miss. And by the way, we start everything Gamecocks Game Day from the party lot at Sound and Images. Of course, Gamecocks Game Day also always sponsored by LexMed Ortho. Elijah and Tyler are going to handle it this Saturday, next couple of Saturdays. Elijah and Tyler will handle it as y'all be out on the Ford family yacht.
That's what we're calling it now.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. So we start up at 10:30 with our coverage, Gamecocks Game Day. Sponsored by LexMed Ortho, 12:30 Network, pregame, 3:30 kick. South Carolina hosting Ole Miss. Let's get to the other cut real quick with Juice. Word Association. David Cloninger doing Word Association with Shane Beamer. Cut 2, Tyler. Here is Shane Beamer's Word Association for Juice Wells.
And also, not really a question, but some word association. Juice Wells.
Good football player.
Simple as that.
There you go. Covered that. There you go. What is said, covered it, and what's not said, covered it.
I think Juju was the only one that said anything other than that. He said, nah, it's my brother. They're friends, and which you expect them to be, but nobody said, I hate that guy. Can't stand. Can't believe you've stabbed us in the back.
I really wonder if you got these guys alone and give them some Falker Truth Serum, what they would say about that whole situation.
What kind of text messages or phone calls they've had since that happened?
What is, hey, man, everybody's got to handle their business. I don't get in other people's business, to, you know what? that one kind of left a bad taste. I'd love to know the truth. All right. More Shane Beamer coming up. We will hear about the blueprint to beat Ole Miss next on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. Oh, what we're talking about. South Carolina Ole Miss. This Saturday, Williams-Brice. Shane Beamer talking to the media yesterday, getting back at it after the bye week. Here's Shane. A couple things we want to get to here. About the blueprint. Did Kentucky give you a blueprint on how to beat Ole Miss? And two, hey, South Carolina whooped Kentucky. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. South Carolina should beat Ole Miss. We all do it, right?
Transitive property.
Exactly. So we'll get Shane's thoughts on both these. We'll start off with the blueprint, Tyler. Cut 7, because look, coming into that game on Saturday against Kentucky, Ole Miss just was smoking people. Again, these people weren't very good, but they were smoking folks. They ran into Kentucky. And no one looks at Kentucky as some great football team. They're going to be what they are under Mark Stoops typically. They'll be all right. But they're physical, and they want to play a slow game, minimize possessions, kind of turn it into a 1978 brawl. And Kentucky did that and won the football game. So here's Shane Beamer talking about, with Cut 7, Tyler, did Kentucky give you a blueprint on the way to possibly beat Ole Miss?
No, I think it's, I don't want to say so much a blueprint or worried so much about how Ole Miss is going to, come out. I'm sure Ole Miss will learn from, those games. Are from that Kentucky game. I'm sure they walk out of there thinking that they, left a lot of plays out there and want to do things better. So certainly you think about what are their answers going to be to maybe things that gave them trouble against Kentucky. And I know Lane talked about it in his press conference yesterday. Kentucky's defense is structured a lot differently than we are. So you can't really look at it and say, okay, it's going to be the same, because we're just different in a lot of ways. And Kentucky did a fabulous job, and Ole Miss certainly had their opportunities. So when I watch a game like that, watch it as a fan but also as a coach, and you certainly think about some things that Kentucky did, but that's every week. I mean, when you're watching a team that you're going to take ideas from or steal things from, whatever you want to call it, that's every week. But I walked out of that game thinking, you know what, we knew Kentucky was a good team when we played them. They showed that against Georgia the next week, and then they showed that against Ole Miss Saturday. And then I also walked out of there saying, I knew Ole Miss is a really good team, and they showed that on Saturday, and it was just a heck of an SEC football game. That's kind of how I look at it. And then when you get back in here on Sunday, then you really dive into the tape and, maybe things that you thought were happening on the TV copy, you really dive into it when you see the sideline and the end zone views and kind of see different things on both sides as well.
I think one thing Shane brings up there is they play defense different than Kentucky does. So you can't do the same things Kentucky does because, well, that's not who you are. I guess what you do is you look at things and go, okay, we can do that. Or that works because of the way we play D. Or we can take that away. Or just really at the end of the day, get physical with them. Rough them up.
Well, one thing that's universal is you can bring a pass rush, which Kentucky did successfully. Got Jackson Dart on the ground for a sack 4 times, but plenty of other pressures there. Like South Carolina can do that too. Like that's going to be a big MO. Yeah, with the way they play with zones and stuff like that, it's obviously going to be a little bit difference and some adjustments there. But yeah, just bringing heat on Jackson Dart, and they won't blitz as much as Brad White, or probably won't blitz as much as Brad White does.
Right.
But you probably don't have to. But that is something that can translate.
Yeah, and look, and the physicality part. Because, look, they're not going to say it out loud. You don't say it's disrespectful. But, again, it goes back to Lane Kiffin's teams at Ole Miss don't like to be thrown around. They don't like the physical stuff. They like it nice and non-physical as much as possible. They like to score touchdowns and gain yards, and they don't want to get in a brawl with you. They're a lover, not a fighter. How's that sound?
Close enough.
Well, that's probably Lane, too. Especially the old Lane, right? We heard.
That was Joey Freshwater.
Yeah, Freshwater. Freshwater was a lover, not a fighter. Lane was studying tape while Joey was out. So, yeah, I mean, that's an MO is get physical with them. Knock them around. Punch them. Make them uncomfortable. Until they prove that that's not a thing, make that a thing continually. Because they've got to show everybody that stereotype of Ole Miss is different now. Yeah, Kentucky did it and it worked. So we'll see. All right, Shane, also, when talking about, quote unquote, the blueprint of what happened last week with Ole Miss. Now, the other one I want to get to here, Tyler, is where to go. Oh, the transitive property. That, wow, you whooped Kentucky. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. That means you're better than Ole Miss, and you should win Saturday. Here's Shane discussing the thing that sports fans do all the time.
I don't think I need to with them, but I did because I'm sure people are saying that, hey, you guys beat Kentucky. Kentucky beat Ole Miss, so you're just automatically supposed to beat Ole Miss, and it doesn't work that way. I mean, we played really well against Kentucky that day. It was a dog fight last Saturday over in Oxford between those two guys, and there's the expectations externally of what people think are supposed to happen, but then there's also making sure that our players, and we talked about that this morning in our team meeting, Hale, was making sure that we have a great respect for how hard winning football games is, how hard it is, and make sure we have a great respect for the process that it takes throughout the week in order to play well on Saturday, and then realizing that no matter what has happened up to this point, all that matters is Saturday, and that we have to play really well in order to win this football game, because this is a really, really, really talented team coming in here. There's no question about it.
I mean, there's talent all over the place. And that's the thing about, again, last Saturday. Despite the fact that Ole Miss played Kentucky's game, despite the fact that Ole Miss didn't go anywhere near playing their A game, they had a shot to win. And really, like we said, a kooky fumble that Kentucky recovers in the end zone and a 4th and 7 that Kentucky hits, Ole Miss still could have walked off that field with a W despite having everything that Kentucky needed to go right for the most part went right for Kentucky to win. I mean, Kentucky dominated time of possession. Again, time of possession is a very overrated stat. But what that did for Kentucky is that kept the Ole Miss offense off the field, and it shrunk the game, and it shrunk the number of possessions, which, again, hurts Ole Miss. But you got to score. You can't. Time of possession doesn't matter if you're not scoring. And Kentucky did enough to win the football game, but time of possession was a thing by having the ball and keeping away from Ole Miss.
For sure.
So that's another thing with South Carolina. You got to keep the ball away from Ole Miss's offense, but you've got to score touchdowns. You got to score points.
Yeah, you got to have long, sustained drives, tire out their defense, because when their offense gets on the field, they're going to go 100 miles an hour, and ideally, if you can force them into a quick 3-and-out, get that defense back on the field. Now, guess what? They're still trying to puff air and drink water, and you can take advantage of them that way.
Exactly. So that's another part of the MO. We talked about the South Carolina defense, South Carolina offense, run the football. Be able to win the time possession battle, but you need to score points. Winning time possession, how many points did that give you at the end of the game? I forgot.
None.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. So you got to score, and touchdowns is preferable to field goals. Because, look, in today's football, good SEC offenses are averaging 30 points a game. So today's football, if an SEC defense walks off the field by holding you to a field goal, they look at that as a win. They kept you out of the end zone. So you got to score touchdowns. Look, no one's going to turn down a field goal because it's points, but you want touchdowns. That's another part of this football game. And yes, that whole, hey, my favorite team beat this team, and that team beat the other team, so my team is better than both those teams.
We've all done it.
Everyone does it.
You look for similarities on your schedule and see how you, they beat them by 10 points, we beat them by 7. So we're 60 points better.
Because especially in college football, because up until now you didn't have an expanded playoff.
Exactly.
And this is how you settled things.
Well, that's how the people in the committee room do a lot of these things, for being honest.
There's no doubt. Let me take a look at that. Alrighty, South Carolina beat Kentucky. Kentucky beat Ole Miss. I'm going to put South Carolina ahead of Ole Miss.
That is how it's done.
We out of Jameson?
That's why we love committees, right?
Oh, we love committees. You and me and Mike Leach. All right, Carolina Calls 6 o'clock with Shane and Todd Ellis. That is tomorrow right here on the Game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. Again, 6 p.m. Carolina Calls with Shane and Todd. Firehouse Subtext, the hour is next, 803-404-6100 on the Halftime Show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head till 3 on the Game. Time for our Firehouse Sub text, the hour 803-404-6100. Also, we had a Twitter poll we had here in the last couple of days. We'll give you some final results on that as well. All right there, Tyler Head, what do you got on the old text line?
Well, I've said leading up to this game that Juice Wells is kind of like Lord Voldemort in the Harry Potter books, where you're not supposed to say his name. When you do, it invokes a lot of emotion. So mentioning him, I knew we would get some responses. Jeff has his own word association. Judas, traitor, self-absorbed, no team and I, just to name a few.
What's the old one? Yeah, there's no I in team, but there's me.
Yeah, that's very true. That is letters 2 and 4 if you rearrange them.
Yep. So, I mean, look, he's a polarizing dude for this game. And we've talked about this. Transferring, fine, whatever, man. That's your bag. But you were very cryptic in how you did it. You did have a lot of people thinking that when you came out saying I'm back or I'm coming back, everybody thought, oh, that means South Carolina, right? Because you didn't say whether it was or it wasn't South Carolina. You just kept it cryptic.
Sure.
That's one. Two, you had some things that you said you didn't need to say. And that was that podcast or that live stream.
Yeah.
About going to a winning program or whatever. You didn't need that. And so it was and plus the season, there's a lot of whispers that you could have played if you wanted to. Because you were cleared to play. You just didn't play because you didn't want to risk your foot being re-injured because you wanted to take off and go somewhere else.
And I think that's what bothers people the most. And again, Juice Wells was benefiting from NIL while I was here. You know, when you are somebody that pays into NIL, you're $20 a month, $100 a month, whatever it is, and you know that some of that money goes to Juice Wells. If you do not think if you think he's intentionally sitting out while also still collecting funds from NIL, that's going to rub you the wrong way. I get where the angst comes from with this.
Oh, I do too. I mean, like if he just would have, if he'd have played his entire second season, or came back in the last month, let's say, and played.
Because there was that last month of the season, we're kind of on watch. Like, okay, he might be available for the Vanderbilt game or the Clemson game or whatever it may be, and that didn't happen.
Right. So let's say he does come back and he plays the month of November, and then he decides to transfer. And he doesn't put out his cryptic message, I'm coming back. He just transfers like everybody does. There wouldn't be this much. There would still, let's say if he did go to, and let's say he ended up at Ole Miss like he did. There wouldn't be as much of the as there is about Juice Wells. So he bring that on himself in a lot of ways for the events that started after the Georgia game? Sure. And then there's the idea, and I don't know how much of this, I think there is some legit to it. Is the offense better with Juice Wells on the field with Xavier Legette? Sure it is. Now, again, does Juice Wells play offensive line? No. Would it have been substantially better? Probably not substantially better because, again, to throw the football, you can't be laying on your back. But would the offense have been better if you would have had Juice Wells to go with Xavier Legette, especially because you threw the ball most of the year? Sure. So I get the frustration, and it goes to this. Ready? Well, maybe you get that 6th win if you got Legette.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Wells with Legette. I get it. I do. I totally understand it. So, again, a lot of booze. Not going to be Juice on Saturday.
Right.
Won't be. And, again, I'm not a booer, but I get this one. I totally do. And so, hopefully you don't see him in the end zone holding the football at any point on Saturday. Hopefully not. Hopefully he has a game like he did against Kentucky.
Ideally, he ends up being a non-factor.
Right.
And again, he's not the biggest concern. Trey Harris is.
Trey Harris.
Number 9 is who you got to keep your eye on more than Juice. Now, again, if you take him away, Juice, Caden Lee, they have the ability to hurt you.
Yep, they can win in one-on-one coverage.
But those are your second and third priorities when it comes to the pass game.
All right, we appreciate it like always, 803-404-6100. All right, the poll question we did a couple days ago, we now have final results. After Ole Miss's loss to Kentucky, do you feel better or worse about the Gamecocks' chances on beating the Rebels this Saturday? 42% feel better, 32% feel the same, 26% feel worse, which is interesting. And we're going to discuss that. We'll just start now, maybe carry it over. The one comment we hear, Ole Miss got exposed and showed they can be contained. Clayton White will do a great job of game planning. That's from Michael on our poll. I believe, my guess is the reason people feel worse is because Ole Miss lost. And now, oh, geez, because they're going to lose 2 in a row. I don't know. Now they're going to be focused. Now they're going to be angry. Now they're going to be taking people seriously, blah, 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 blah. Don't you think that's the reason people say they feel worse? Does that make sense?
Yeah, probably so. Where now you can't really catch them slipping, as opposed to if they beat Kentucky 31-10 and they're still feeling confident about themselves, maybe they overlook you. Like, no, they're going to be more focused this week.
I better be, right? Because you lose the second game in a row, you pretty much lost all of your leeway for the rest of the season, right? If you want to be in the college football playoff.
Right.
Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. That's coming up next. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We are rolling up until 3 here on the Game in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, Game TV, Game app. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. As we roll till 3, we always want to thank our buds at the Men's Clinic of South Carolina for sponsoring our little shindig here every day from noon to 3. Also, tomorrow, 9 a.m. to noon, Gamecock Central takes over Gold Line Framing on 12th Street in West Columbia. Tyler and Wes and Chris will be hanging out there. Again, that's 9 to noon tomorrow. All right, in football. Let's start off a very interesting little cut here that Tyler dug up. Jake Crane from the Daily Wire talking about South Carolina. And one of the things that I think are interesting on podcasts and just like the internet world of media is always with this, Tyler. Well, the fans are saying this. Well, the fans are speaking that. Well, the message boards say this. Well, Twitter says that. And we take whatever little percentage of that and we now make it a thing, like it's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of this is a thing with like a large percentage of this fan base, but is there a percentage of the fan base who is thinking the way that Jake Crane addresses? Sure, every fan base has this percentage.
Yeah.
Where's Jake Crane of the Daily Wire talking about the Gamecocks have to earn respect this weekend and quit whining about, well, we beat Kentucky and why aren't we getting a lot of love? Because Kentucky's getting love from beating Ole Miss. Here's Jake Crane addressing that kind of that mindset.
I've heard from a bunch of South Carolina fans that they feel disrespected. They see Kentucky getting all these accolades after playing a close game with Georgia and then beating Ole Miss last weekend after the Gamecocks clobbered them 31-6 a couple weeks ago. And I can get why you're a little upset, but if you want to get the respect that you feel like you deserve, you have to go win a big-time game. Hell, Game Day went to Columbia after you guys beat Kentucky, and say what you want about the officiating. It's been bad all through college football. South Carolina lost and missed a huge opportunity against LSU. But this weekend, with LaNorris Sellers returning, Beamer and the boys can take a huge step towards getting that big-time respect back against an Ole Miss team that's going to be pissed off after losing at home to the Wildcats. The time for almost is over in South Carolina. And after this game, you enter a brutal stretch going to Alabama, then to Oklahoma, and then hosting Texas A&M. You need the momentum and the confidence to do something that not many people thought outside of Columbia could be done. So no more words about how unfair the Kentucky love is. Go out and earn your accolades. It's kill or be killed out here. And a closed mouth don't get fed in these SEC streets.
Okay, let's start with I heard from lots of, what's your definition of lots? Again, just that small percentage of horde that goes through the social media / podcasting / live stream world. I think South Carolina fans, for the most part, get why Kentucky's getting love for that win. That win was in Oxford. You get love for that kind of win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, nobody saw this coming. Kentucky played Georgia close at home. And everybody went, Georgia's had a bad day. Again, didn't take them seriously. But it wasn't like people were going, oh, Kentucky this, Kentucky that. Most people were surprised Kentucky played Georgia that well, right?
Yeah, of course.
So take that surprise and double it that they went to Oxford and got a victory over an Ole Miss team everybody thought was top 10, top 7-ish football team who had beaten no one all year.
Yeah.
Again, are really people sitting around Columbia, South Carolina, butthurt over the fact that Kentucky's getting respect for a win over a team that was being pumped up all in the offseason and all they had done against inferior competition was step on them? And then you went to their place and beat them? I mean, you should get something for that, right? But at the end of the day, you did beat Kentucky at Kentucky. That was one reason why everybody looked at Kentucky and went, hey, they're not that good.
Yeah.
It wasn't that South Carolina went into Kentucky and won a close game or won a fluky game. South Carolina dominated Kentucky. So I think that's why Kentucky's getting some of this whoa, because no one saw this coming the last couple of games that the Wildcats have played. Doesn't mean that all of a sudden Kentucky's, wow, good. No, maybe or now we sit back and go, okay, well, Georgia got beat by Alabama in Tuscaloosa, fell behind 37 at halftime, had to have a big rally. So how good is Georgia? Then this one, ready? How good's Ole Miss? It's not so much Kentucky's so good now. I think a lot of people are questioning Georgia and Ole Miss at this point.
I'll go back to something I brought up, I think, yesterday when Bill and Preston were talking to Jason Sherbert on Monday, and he said, I think it kind of takes about half a season to really figure things out in college football right now. I think we're still very much in the guessing stage where we're going off of, well, we think we know this, we think we know that, and until really maybe about the time those first college football playoff rankings come out, which is, I guess, why they come out so late in the year, we don't really start knowing everything about teams because, again, Georgia looked like they were struggling against Kentucky. And again, the first half against Alabama looked a whole lot better than the second half and nearly won the game. So what does that say about Georgia? I don't know exactly. I'll probably have a better idea in about a month from now if they play some more high-quality opponents. Yeah. But it's just, especially for a team like Ole Miss, that, again, for the first 4 games of their season, played nobody. Played teams they could have beaten with their eyes closed and one hand tied behind their back. They finally had a quality opponent, weren't disastrous, but weren't looking like they did in the first 4 weeks. So it's still very incomplete in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And I think, again, I get we want content. I get we want to be heard and listened to and watched and read. I understand. I'll be honest with you, and it's just me. I have not run into people in the last few days who are jumping up and down about Kentucky getting respect and South Carolina not. Again, the world we live in, we take a few things and make something out of it, right? We take a few, because again, look, all these ways that fans talk, we have to, I always go back to this. It's a small percentage of the world we live in.
Yeah.
And it's your job, I guess, as a podcaster, talk show host, writer, TV personality, whatever, to take a few comments from someone and make it something. I haven't run into a horde of people who are beating their chest, offended by any kind of love Kentucky's getting compared to a lack of it that South Carolina's getting. Again, maybe I'm talking to the wrong people. I don't know. But I just don't feel like there's this mob of folks with pitchforks and big things of fire running around mad as hell over Kentucky getting some kind of respect that South Carolina should be getting. I just feel like some guy really needs something to talk about. And that's okay, because we all do. I'm not giving him any grief. I don't feel like that's the message from this fan base right now than the people that I've talked to. I don't know about you. I just don't feel that.
Yeah, maybe that was something that was a little bit earlier on in the season, but I feel like I feel like the country as a whole is paying more attention to South Carolina. You definitely have the opportunity to go out there and put a stamp on it this weekend. That's for sure. But I don't think people are writing South Carolina off necessarily as what you did in the first month doesn't matter, because again, you did maul Kentucky.
3-1.
You did nearly beat LSU, sans some questionable calls and your quarterback getting hurt. But I don't think it's a situation where they're just being overlooked across the board.
I just don't either. I think we've been talking about this, and you just made the point that's such a good point is, in this transfer portal era, when you're piecing these teams all together and everyone's doing it, I mean, only 3 teams didn't take anybody in the portal: Army, Navy, Clemson. The portal is a thing, and you don't get to play preseason games. You don't really get to ramp up against opposition by doing anything that can cause any continuity for your football team. And so you add the transfer portal to the regular, you don't play preseason games. You're probably right now questioning a lot of things you see.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden now Alabama's unbeatable, right? We'll see. Hell of a win over Georgia at Tuscaloosa. A game, by the way, who was leading with 2 minutes left? Not Alabama, after going up 30-7. So we just, what we know is we don't know at this point. We just don't. I mean, what's Oregon? Is Oregon the team that barely got by Idaho and Boise State? Or is Oregon a real contender? Don't know. Ohio State, who have they truly played so far? Yeah, there's your list. What do we know? We don't know a lot. And look, Texas, that win at Michigan's impressive. I won't lie. I don't think Michigan's anywhere near as good as they were last year, but they're a physical football team, and they're another team that's going to punch you in the lower extremities and want to see how you react. And Texas went out there and got them early and got on top of them, took them totally out of everything. So that was a good win, even though I think Michigan's an 8-4 team before it's all said and done. So eventually you got to throw the football. The forward pass is still legal, right?
Yeah.
Not in Ann Arbor. But we just don't know a lot about anything right now. And what we do know, circling it back here, South Carolina's 3-1, had a really nice win at Kentucky, should have beat LSU, and could be really sitting at 4-0. How ironic would it be? You'd be the undefeated team in this matchup on Saturday.
It only happened.
Almost happened. But yeah, I mean, you had a couple of great wins 2 years ago over Clemson and Tennessee. They were phenomenal wins. No one can ever take them away from you. This year's version of this football team, yeah, you want to go out there and beat a ranked squad. You had LSU on the ropes and should have got them. Now you got another ranked team coming into your house, and you want to take advantage of it. You absolutely do, because then you got roadies to ranked teams after this. So it'd really be nice to beat a ranked team at home. So, and I think that's really what you're looking for more than, we want respect because of the win over Kentucky. I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm talking to the wrong people, Tyler. I don't know. I got nothing on that. But anyway, all right. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Some Shane Beamer. We'll hear about our injury report. We'll get the health of Sellers, Lenore Sellers, and Rocket Sanders, and we'll also Mr. Brown at wide receiver. We'll get the injury report next. And wow, the Raiders want to trade Devontae Adams maybe, and their head coach is liking stuff put up on the internet saying could Devontae Adams have played his last game. So basically, it's just business as usual with the Raiders.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. We'll get to that, too, as we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, hanging with you till 3 here on the game. (803) 874-MENS, Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's so simple. It's so easy. You make that call and you talk to them. You set up a free consultation. It's confidential with Dr. Dan and the staff. And you talk about what's going on in your life, that you're not the same guy you used to be. You say, look, my workouts at the gym, I'm not as strong. I don't bounce back as well. I'm not sleeping like I used to. I have a lack of life drive, sex drive, professional drive, personal drive. I just, I can't remember things like I used to. I need help. 803-875-MENS. 803-875-MENS. You make that call. You have that consultation. It could just be low testosterone. It's that simple. If the staff thinks it is, they'll do lab work. If it comes back low T, they'll put you on a program to get you being back you again. 803-875-MENS. Make the call. Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head as we roll football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Shane Beamer talking to the media yesterday as we get ready for Ole Miss in South Carolina. We'll get ready with our tailgate, our Friday tailgate, with the postgame show at Columbia Craft, Green Street in the Vista from 3 to 6 p.m. Go hang out, knock down some craft beers, or you can just ask Elijah and Jay which craft beers they like because they've tried every one of them over and over and over again.
Well, Elijah sweats craft beers.
He absolutely does. Kind of has that, I think he used it for deodorant. He taps a little bit under his arm.
Yeah.
Comes to work. So that's 3 to 6 Friday, our tailgate show, getting you ready for South Carolina Ole Miss at Columbia Craft, Green Street in the Vista. All right, time. Let's hit our little fancy intro there, Tyler, for our injury report, get you caught up on what's going on with South Carolina. Important injuries when it comes to Rocket Sanders, who had the ankle in the Akron game, Lenore Sellers, who had the ankle in the LSU game, and also Jared Brown, who was a hamstring, right? I believe was a hammy? Hammy quad?
So. It wasn't anything too severe.
Right. So let's get an update from Dr. Shane Beamer on our injury report here on the halftime show.
Yeah, I said that's all I'm going to say about the injuries, and then Pete slipped one in, and now you're going. So I said I think we're in good shape, I think were the words I used. So Lenoris and Rocket were both out there. They both look good. Were they 100%? I wouldn't say they were 100%, but they both told me they felt great and they look good, and they'll both be able to do even more tomorrow, I would think, as well. And before anybody asks it, Jared Brown was out there today too. So I'll go ahead and let somebody get an extra question in, but I'll answer in that one as well.
It feels like Lenore Sellers will play. Jared Brown will play. Rocket Sanders is on pace to hopefully play.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, I think you said it yesterday or the day before. It's like, look, ankles are – anybody's ever rolled their ankle in their life or had their ankle rolled upon or whatever. Everybody's ankle's different. Everybody recovers different. No one is ankles is never the same. Some people bounce back faster than others. So, hopefully, Rocket bounces back quick and we see him on Saturday, because Rocket Sanders is very vital to the success of this offense the way it's run. He just is. And without him, and again, we've been saying it all week, no disrespect to the other guys in that room. Guys in there have their skill sets. Some guys are young and raw. Some guys can do this well or that well. But you don't have a guy like Rocket Sanders in that running back room at this point. And Sanders healthy gives you a much better chance to win the football game, especially when you run the ball, 70% of the time, Tyler?
Yeah, 70% of the time, and he's gotten a bulk of the carries. It wasn't until the Akron game the other day that we saw a good dose of Oscar Attaway. We saw more Juju McDowell. You hope these guys will be able to pick up the slack, but there's a reason Rocket Sanders is Rocket Sanders, because he is head and shoulders above everybody else for the most part in that running back room. And if you don't have him, you're going to have some form of regression at your running back spot.
Yeah, so you need a healthy Rocket Sanders in this football game, especially when we talk about some of the MO. Like you want to be able to, and again, end these drives and touchdowns, but you want to be able to occupy clock. You want to be able to make this like basketball, slow tempo type game. You don't want Ole Miss running them down the field on you.
Nope.
And the best way to do that is occupy the football, keep it away from the Ole Miss offense, and finish your long drives with touchdowns.
Yep.
That's the formula in offense in this one. And you can do it a heck of a lot easier with Rocket Sanders on the field. So that's a deal. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Okay, the Raiders are Raidering because this is what the Raiders do. A couple years ago, the Raiders traded a ton of draft capital to the Green Bay Packers to get Davante Adams, even though the Raiders were nowhere near a position of, hey, you're only a star wide receiver away from maybe competing for a shot at going to a Super Bowl or a deep playoff run. The Raiders got Davante Adams because they had a shot to get that kind of player because guess what? He was buds with your quarterback.
Right.
They played in college together. They're besties. So you go get Davante Adams, you go up a ton of draft capital and lots of cap space, and you get Davante Adams. Then a year later, you know what you do? You dump the quarterback
He's off to New Orleans.
that he came to play for. And since then, you've had a rotating quarterback position. Now, look, did you get 10 wins and slip yourself in the playoffs? Yeah. If you did a deep dive on that Raider team, it was truly a playoff team. Probably not, but you made it, so good for you.
Oh, by the way, you got Kansas City, and was it the opening round? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How'd that work?
Yeah, not good.
Okay. So now you've started off the year tough. You did get a nice win in Baltimore, but you started off the year tough. And I wonder why. Again, no offense to anyone, but if you think you can trot out Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and believe you're going to get high-level quarterback play to unleash your passing attack, you've lost your mind. So now you're sitting around. You started off slow. And you're going to trade your star wide receiver you gave up a lot of cap space and a lot of draft capital for. Now, should you trade him? Probably, because, look, let's face it. You got into the playoffs with a lot of smoke and mirrors last year, to your credit. But if you look at this roster, it's not a playoff roster. It's just not. Davante Adams is trying to hide it, maybe. He don't want to be there anymore. Is there a desire to be there? He signed off on a thing where he got mic'd up during a game, and he's on the sideline. I got to get the bleep out of here because these guys are getting me bleeping killed and all this other stuff. The guy don't want to be a Raider. The only reason he was a Raider, he wanted to hang with his boy.
Yeah, well, and now the hot rumor is that he's trying to get to New Orleans, where Derek Carr is now.
Yeah, he wants to play with his buddy, or he wants to go play with Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. There's about 3 or 4 other teams.
With before.
Yes, there's 3 or 4 other teams that could use a big play wide receiver. I'm sure Davante Adams would go like this. He wouldn't say this if he was playing Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Oh, no, thank you. Of course not. So there are a bunch of different options to trade Davante Adams. But the Raiders, the rumor is, again, I don't know how true it is, that the Raiders are willing to take a second-round pick and other compensation, which sounds like a player. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting since you gave up a boatload of draft capital to go get Davante Adams. Now, is he 2 years older? I think he's 31 now. You're not getting what you traded for him. But I guess it seems like you're trying to get whatever you can get because the dude doesn't want to be there anymore.
Right.
And there are teams that could benefit. Even Adams at age 31 still brings you a quality wide receiver to go with whoever you have in Kansas City, or Garrett Wilson with the Jets, or whatever you have in Baltimore, the Commanders wide receiver room with McLaurin. The Steelers always need wide receivers these days. So there are teams that would give you something. The Cowboys need somebody to go with CeeDee Lamb. And remember, they're all in.
Supposedly.
So you can find a deal, and maybe you can get enough people interested that you can drive your price up a little bit and get something. But if you're the Raiders, this was a mistake from the get-go you should have never made. But you gotta look at yourself in the mirror at some point and understand who you are and where you're at. Your quarterback position, it ain't happening. You don't have playmakers. Your last so many drafts haven't really brought you anything special. You know what it's time to do? Time to hit the reset button.
Blow it up and start over.
And it's something the Raiders never want to do.
Well, like you said, you're only going to go so far with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell.
So,
and I get Antonio. Pierce was a player's coach. I don't know if this whole head coaching thing is gonna pan out long term for him.
And I don't like the idea he liked the social media post or whatever that, has Davante Adams played his last game with the Raiders? Why would you click like there?
Yeah, you're now opening up a whole another can of worms about the culture within your organization, stuff like that. Don't even go there.
No, whether you're secretly sitting in your house looking at your wife going, God, I want to trade that guy. I want that diva off my roster like nobody's business. Go tell your wife, tell your dog, tell your neighbor, tell your neighbor's dog.
Yeah.
Click the like.
Those feelings should stay within the walls of your organization. Those things that shouldn't creep out because, again, it just adds to the narrative about the dynamic between the two right now.
You're the head coach, man. You're not playing anymore. You can't do that. We always talk about, those 18 to 22-year-old college kids on Twitter. How about the grown men on Twitter
Yeah.
or social media? I think it was an Instagram, not a Twitter. But anyway. So the Raiders are continuing to be the Raiders. And yeah, we'll see what happens with Davante Adams. I believe he will get dealt. I think that will happen. What will the Raiders get? Who knows? Because they're the Raiders. We'll find out. But that's a huge rumor that came out this morning about Davante Adams possibly being moved. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We will get back to Shane Beamer discussing a myriad of things. One about how about self-assessing mistakes with this team during a bye week to see if they can fix some stuff moving forward as they have the meat of the schedule coming up. It is football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, till 3 on the game. what we're talking about. My earbuds are hooked to something. What we're talking about, obviously, is South Carolina and Ole Miss. Saturday, 3:30 kick right here on the Game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. We start off with our local pregame show here on 107.5 The Game at 10:30 from the party lot at Sound and Images, sponsored by LexMed Ortho. Network pregame at 12:30, and then kickoff at 3:30, South Carolina and Ole Miss. We've been hearing from Shane Beamer. Also talk a little football in the 1 o'clock hour in general, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. All right, so Shane, as he hit a bunch of different things in yesterday's presser, discussing mistakes. One thing is you do in a bye week, and you know this if you follow football, is you self-scout yourself, self-assess. So, okay, where are we at? What are we doing well? What do we got to do better? What do we want to do different? And just all those things you're breaking down as a coaching staff. Here's Shane Cut 3 Tyler talking about self-assessing mistakes.
Great question. Try and learn from them. There's try and learn from them and be better the next time, if that makes sense. Whether it be decisions that I've made in games, you try and learn from them. I'm still mad at myself that I punted at midfield against Clemson last year in the fourth quarter when we had 4th and 6 or 7. I'm still mad at myself in 2021 that we had the ball right before the half at Georgia, like on our 1 yard line. We tried to max protect and throw a deep shot and got tackled for a safety. There's some things in the LSU game that I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't do better. I'm still mad at myself in the Gator Bowl. Notre Dame faked a punt on us, and I saw it coming, and I recognized they were in a different formation and that something was up, and I saw it, and I thought we'd be okay defending it even if they did do something, and we didn't, and we gave up a fake punt. So those, to me, are mistakes that I made that still eat at me. And you just try and learn from them where, okay, we're in that situation again. How are we going to, handle it? And for me as the head coach, it's in-game decisions, but it's also, I think, looking at, practices, and I take notes on everything, and every single day I'm writing down notes. So it helps me now being in year 4 where I can look back at, this week in year 1, year 2, year 3, coming off a bye week, notes from last year that I liked, didn't like, things like that as well. So you're constantly just trying to learn, but also Coach Day always uses the term around here, course correct, where if we do make a mistake or we do something that gets us off course, we're able to correct ourselves and get back on course. So that's what I try and do. Hope that answers your question. Good.
Shane there spent more time talking about all the stuff he thinks he should have done better. Which, that's one thing.
They say coaches don't forget.
Oh, absolutely. How about him? I remember in 1997, I was playing a video game. I was playing college football.
Well, actually, he would have been on the Virginia Tech team in 97, right?
Yeah.
I remember we lined up. It was 3rd and goal.
Yeah, we had this protection set up on special teams, and they got a punt block. And I'll never forget, I should have blocked it. That's what coaches do. They remember everything. And look, what you're doing this week, obviously, like we just talked about, is you have a chance. You have 2 bye weeks this year. You're going to have another bye week at the end of October to be able to take a step back and look at where you're at, what you need to do better, what you like, what you don't like, maybe you want to take a different, and maybe we want to do this differently now than we did before. Whatever the case. You're always self-assessing, and Shane's talking about self-assessing decisions from 3-4 years ago and 2 years ago. So we'll see what South Carolina does different against Ole Miss as well. What do they do? How do they take that bye week, Tyler, and use it to their advantage? Because South Carolina's been pretty good on the coming off of bye weeks. What do they do schematically on both sides of the ball differently? What do they do? What's it going to be like play calling now? What's the script? Are there anything or any things that are going to be now tweaked or changed after you've had a week to sit back, self-evaluate and self-scout your squad? Where are you now going to go? Are there things you're going to do different? So very interesting. We'll see where the whole situation ends up. All right, it's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Couple of things in the world of conference realignment we didn't get to yesterday, and there's a new one today. UTEP, they are moving on to the Mountain West. And, I mean, I get it. El Paso is a top 100-ish TV market. I get it. Makes sense from a geographical standpoint to add UTEP to the Mountain West. It's not like, I mean, again, UTEP has had more success in basketball than in football over the course of the program's history. And Mike Price did some stuff at UTEP where they made some bowl games, but basketball is where they've been a much better basketball program over the years. But anyway, right now, it's not to be mean, it's slim pickings, right? That's where you're at.
Well, the Mountain West is kind of in panic mode because the Pac-12 just started, taking up all their schools to where they fell below the threshold number that they needed to continue being a conference going forward because of the NCAA rules. So they're like, all right, UTEP, come on. Like they're just throwing it out there and seeing who wants to come.
Right, they got to. They also reached out to Texas State. Texas State is staying put in the Sun Belt, which I find interesting. Now, are you doing that because you're in a league that, believe it or not, is much more stable compared to what's going on in the Mountain West? I mean, Mountain West is most likely going to be making more money than the Sun Belt, but is your fear if you're Texas State, you leave the comfort of the Sun Belt, even though you're not making as much dough, but you don't know what's going to go on in the Mountain West.
Yeah, there's this unsustainability with the Mountain West because, again, they're just getting poached by the Pac-12 at this point in time. You don't know what the future of that's going to be. You don't know if Pac-12 is going to expand further down the line where you get in this kind of trouble again. So, yeah, if I'm Texas State, and I don't know what the exact number that you're making revenue-wise with Sunbelt would be, but it's apparently not that much of a difference to warrant you going out there and taking a chance on a conference that has a shaky future ahead of it possibly.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, and then let's think about this. There's been a rumor also the Pac-12 might take a shot at Texas State.
Mm-hmm. Which... That's, again, we're trying to talk about building back up a power conference. That's not the way to do it. But to get members.
No, that's look. I mean, I think right now the Pac-12, just like the Mountain West, wants to ramp up to have the amount of members you need to be able to move forward as a conference. But yeah, ready? Texas State. Ooh, I'm tingly. What are they, like 30 miles outside of Austin or something? But they're not a big market in any way, shape, or form.
And again, we said that nobody's going to view this reformed Pac-12 as anything serious. It's going to be Mountain West to the west. It's Mountain West, essentially.
Mountain West with the ocean.
Exactly. It's not going to be seen that much differently. Again, there was already this scheduling agreement between the two to basically throw a bone to Oregon State and Washington State because I think the Mountain West felt bad for them that their entire conference just left them behind because they're in Pullman, Washington, and Corvallis, Oregon. But now the Pac-12 on the other side of things, like, all right, well, we're just going to take your main players and reform the artist formerly known as the Pac-12.
Well, you know what I thought was interesting, too? Remember, when all this was going on and the Pac-12 disintegrated and it became the two-pack, and they were talking about the Mountain West, about scheduling. Remember, the Mountain West came out and said, look, we're open to any kind of conference realignment ideas, even, merging up with these two schools and maybe making a pack, whatever it is. And we're ready to listen to whatever that maybe the two-pack wants to discuss. So to me, again, ego gets involved and all these other things get involved. But if you were what's left of the Pac-12, and maybe they did this, it just didn't work, I would have sat down with the Mountain West and said, look, there's two of us.
It makes more sense, right?
It just, why don't we can keep the name, the Pac, whatever it is at this point, the Pac 16, who knows?
The Pac West, the Mountain Pac.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know.
But we can get together and see if we can try to leverage what we have out here to the best we can do it. I feel like the two-pack, Don't you believe they have this delusion they can get into the power leagues again?
I think that's what it is. I think, okay, we get our numbers back up, and sure, you got like Boise. Okay, that's quality. UNLV is obviously playing really well right now, but I think there's this false idea in their minds that they're going to be viewed like the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12 one day. It's not going to happen. You're a group of 6 conference now.
Yeah.
That, hey, you got a spot in the playoff if you do good enough, but you're never going to be viewed the same way again.
And the other part, I think they're afraid if they just take the Mountain West, then they're going to be automatically viewed as a group of 5 league. Well, guess what you are?
Yeah, newsflash, buddy.
You're a group of 6 league. Congratulations. Way to go. This thing is a mess and will continue being a mess. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Firehouse Sub, text the hours next at 803-404-6100. It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head hanging out with you till 3 on the game. Time for our Firehouse Sub text to the hour at 803-404-6100. Then we'll get to the, I tell you what, the hits just keep on pummeling Florida State. We'll get to that here in a second. But first, what's our Firehouse Sub text to the hour at 803-404-6100?
Troy weighs in and says, should have beaten LSU, but also should have lost to ODU. That part always gets left out when talking about this team.
Should have lost to ODU or could have really lost to ODU?
Yeah, I don't think should have is maybe necessarily the right word. He definitely played a closer game than people expected. But, I mean, you still did what you needed to do to win. It just wasn't comfortable necessarily.
Yeah, Texter, I get where you're going to. That one was teetering, and you got that win thanks to your defense forcing a huge turnover. I don't know if should have lost, but yeah, way too close than you needed it to be. Was not a great performance. So you could have lost that game.
Yeah,
absolutely. You could have lost that game. There's no doubt. But we appreciate it, 803-404-6100. All right, so Florida State, and this could be to South Carolina's benefit. Malik Clark, 4-star wide receiver from Rock Hill, decommitted to Florida State last night. Now, obviously, I believe, is he showing up this weekend for the South Carolina Ole Miss game unofficial visit?
I think so.
Did I read that somewhere?
I know he was, I believe he was here for the LSU game a couple weeks ago.
That was his official visit, right?
Yeah.
So, South Carolina, North Carolina, NC State also in the running at the time, along with Florida State. So, Mike Newell, his 2025 recruiting class, of course, Florida State's 1-4. They've lost 4-star defensive tackle Myron Charles, top 200 recruit to Texas. 4-star defensive end Javion Hilson has pulled his pledge from the Seminoles and plans to announce his final commitment closer to the December 4th early signing period. Florida State has now fallen from the top 10 in recruiting to 29th in the latest rankings for the 2025 cycle. They're trying to hold on to 7 top 300 prospects on ESPN's board, including the 5-star offensive tackle Solomon Thomas, who's 11th overall. So the good news here, Malik Clark, obviously South Carolina was in it right to the very end. South Carolina sitting 3-1. North Carolina struggling. NC State struggling.
Yep.
Obviously you've moved. Look, other schools could be involved here now too because a 4-star kid.
Totally.
But South Carolina is now back in the running, serious running for Malik Clark. So that's good news.
It is. And when you look at a team like Florida State, it's look, and Wes and Chris do a really good job of explaining this. The recruits don't look at games the same way that we do. It's not about, well, man, they lost this weekend, I shouldn't go there. Like, no, it's a little bit more than that. It's about their relationship with coaches and stuff like that. But I think there is value to looking at a program that, again, should have been in the college ball playoff a year ago, ACC champion, the whole 9 yards, to looking like a complete dumpster fire a year later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, and I agree with what Wes and Chris are saying. What these kids are looking at is not what we as media or fans look at. It's different. But you're sitting there going, man, they suck. And maybe you're hearing some things. Here's the other thing. You make connections when you go to visit, right?
Yep.
Maybe you're hearing things from those connections. They're saying, dude, this thing's bad.
Yeah. Or
this locker room's bad.
Yep.
Maybe the coaching staff is being a certain way now. They're not reacting to this very well. They're maybe hearing stuff from the people they did their OV with that are on these football teams that is causing kids to decommit. I always think about that when you watch a rash of them.
Right.
You know, you're 1-4, and maybe the guys that you became boys with and you got exchanged phone numbers to text with, who, remember, we're trying to recruit you to play there.
Of course.
Might be saying, hey, dude, this is not pretty. It's getting ugly.
And I think also in years past, maybe those guys wouldn't have been open about that because they know they're still going to be here next year. Now they have the ability to leave. If I know, like, man, I'm gonna get out of Florida State at the end of this year. I'm gonna go do my own thing. Why wouldn't I tell the 4-star kid, like, man, you don't want to be a part of this?
Or this, who is hosting the official visit? Is it one of your transfer portal guys, or is it one of your high school recruits that has been on the roster for multiple years?
Right.
Because again, you come in from the portal. This thing's 1-4. DJU's throwing the ball to the opposite team as much as he's throwing it to your team. You know, he's now injured. You're playing a freshman. Your season's gone sideways. Maybe because you haven't been around for 3 years or 2 years or whatever, you got a different perspective, right?
Right.
So this is very interesting that you're seeing these kids all decommitting from Tallahassee. Just saying. And I feel like that they're getting some word from someone who they know around the program. That's what it feels like to me. I could be wrong. We're just speculating from what we read and hear. So, but Malik Clark, that's the good news. That recruitment's back open again for South Carolina. Hopefully take advantage of it. What's trending at 2 coming up from Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions as we roll the halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head. We're running till 3 on the game in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach. Game TV on YouTube. Also, if you're streaming us, we appreciate it.
Welcome back into the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford, along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. It is time for what is trending at 2. Of course, the thing we've been focusing on all week is South Carolina and Ole Miss coming up on Saturday, 3:30 kick. You'll be able to listen to right here on the game. Ole Miss is the 9.5-point favorite going into the weekend as they look to rebound after their loss last weekend to Kentucky, and Carolina hopes to come out of the bye week refreshed and able to start off what's going to be a tough month of October with a victory against the Rebels. But as we start the month of October, that also means got some playoff baseball going on, including last night between the Braves and the Padres.
He swings, sends one high and deep to left. He's watching, so are 44,000 others. Oh, what a start for the Padres as Tatis leaves the building, and this place is on its feet. Padres lead it 2-0.
Fernando Tatis Jr. with the 2-run home run in the bottom of the first inning to help propel the Padres 4-0 over the Braves in Game 1 of the NL Wild Card as a nightcap of Day 1 of MLB's postseason for 2024. And look, for the Braves, it was going to be an uphill battle going into this game. They played 5 games in 4 days. They played a doubleheader that they lost Game 1 of on Monday, which means they had to try in Game number 2. Well, the Mets didn't because they'd already won Game number 1 just to get to this point. They then boarded a plane, flew out to San Diego late Monday night. I think they got in about midnight, and then played a game less than 24 hours later. Oh, by the way, with your best pitcher hurt with back spasms that he suffered before, the where he potentially would have pitched in that second game of the doubleheader on Monday against the Mets. So, considering all that, I didn't have any expectations for the Braves going into this game. I thought, regardless, they're probably going to lose that one, and maybe have a chance in tonight's game coming up for game number 2. And I'll give them credit. They only allowed 4 runs on 5 hits to the Padres. Pitching staff, outside of A.J. Smith-Shawver after he got shelled through an inning and a third, Bomer came in, Chavez and Luke Jackson to close it out. They all pitched relatively well. Jackson gave up the 1 home run in the last inning there, the bottom of the 8th, when Padres came up to bat. But other than that, everything was pretty okay for the bullpen. That hopefully is a sign for things to come moving forward. Unfortunately, the offense for the Braves just could not string together consistent hits. They actually out-hit the Padres 7-5, but they just could not consistently get guys on base and move them around well enough. A lot of 1, 2, 3 innings as well. So tough way to start the postseason for the Braves. Got game number 2 coming up tonight, as they will throw Max Fried. The Braves will, and you got a good chance when you do have Fried on the mound. On the other side of things, Joe Musgrove going to go for the San Diego Padres. Elsewhere yesterday, you got the Tigers beat the Astros 3-1. Royals topped the Orioles 1-0, and the Mets winning 8-7 on the road at the Brewers. So 3 of the 4 road teams picking up the win in game number 1. And I think you heard reference of it in the Sports Minute a few minutes ago. I believe 7 of the 8, 7 of the 8 visiting teams were successful on the road last year. And that could potentially bode well for the teams that have already gotten out to the 1-0 advantage. Or excuse me, 7 of the 8 teams that won game 1 ended up winning the series. So for these road teams, picked up those wins, that could certainly bode well for them. And I got to give my hats off to the Padres for the environment last night. Like, it was almost like a college football atmosphere, right? And there's a lot of good stadiums around the league that are rowdy when it comes to the postseason, and maybe it's because the pandemic and stuff from a couple years ago with the Padres that they didn't get to enjoy that one as much as they otherwise would have wanted to. But definitely a great atmosphere, great crowd to watch the Braves and the Padres, and should expect another good one coming up tonight. And again, if the Braves lose, that ends their season. But as we talked about yesterday, when you deal with all the injuries that the Braves have dealt with this entire season, just getting the postseason, extending your streak of consecutive years playing in October to 7, that's worth something. And I think a lot of Braves fans, as unhappy as they would be if they got eliminated tonight, would accept that small silver lining that, hey, regardless of the setbacks, this team was resilient enough to find their way into October when it was all said and done. And the schedule's pretty much going to follow the same as it was yesterday, getting set for game number 2 of the Tigers and Astros coming up in about 25 minutes at 2:30 on ABC. Royals and Orioles will play at 4:30 on ESPN. Mets and Brewers at 7:30 tonight on ESPN. Then the Braves and the Padres wrap things up once again at 8:30 on ESPN2. And, of course, all the two top seeds from each the National League and American League waiting this weekend for the divisional series. This news came out earlier on today. Of course, everybody knows that I'm a big NASCAR guy, and this news, extends past the NASCAR world into mainstream sports media. And if you haven't heard about it already, 2 NASCAR teams, 23XI Racing, which is co-owned by Michael Jordan, and Front Row Motorsports have filed a lawsuit against NASCAR in reference to antitrust. The lawsuit, which is against NASCAR and Chairman Jim France, is in reference to the new charter system limiting competition by unfairly bidding teams or unfairly binding teams to series, its tracks, and its suppliers. I'll try and explain this the best that I can here in a couple of minutes. NASCAR has what's called a charter system, which is essentially their version of franchising, where you essentially buy a spot. There are 36 of them in the field. You pay a certain amount depending on the market price for a charter. That means you are locked in to every single race over the course of the year, course of an entire season. And being a charter team means you get higher payouts based on your finishing position, based on your points, all that kind of stuff when the season is over, as opposed to being what's called an open team, which there are 4 open spots open for every race. You make significantly less and you're not guaranteed starts in the field if you're an open car. So if you want to be a part, if you want to run for a championship, you have to be a charter team. The problem is that the money that you make, even as a charter team, the highest end, the championship team, does not make enough money to fund an entire season. And motorsports as a whole has always been built off the backs of sponsorship. So I have a car and I have a budget of X million dollars. I need to go out there and find enough sponsorship to supplement that so I can run the entire season. The hope with the charter system was that eventually the money you're making off of TV contracts, ticket sales, all those kind of things would be enough of a supplement where teams didn't have to rely on sponsorship as much and could maybe turn a profit just by being a part of this charter system. Well, that hasn't happened. NASCAR in the past 2 years has been negotiating with its teams on a new charter deal. Teams, rightfully so, wanted a bigger piece of the pie to get more money in their pockets, especially after NASCAR signed a brand new TV deal that brought more money in as a whole. Team said, hey, we should get that. We are putting on the show here. NASCAR did not give them as much as they wanted. Gave them a slight increase, but not as much as they were hoping for, and not enough to significantly change the structure of how they do things and if they can turn a profit and all that kind of stuff. NASCAR also, with this new charter agreement, basically gave them an ultimatum at the 11th hour on September the 6th, which was a Friday, saying, okay, here's this 112-page document. You have an hour to read it and sign it, or we revoke your charters. Now, they ended up giving them until midnight, but still not enough time to, pour over every detail of it. Most teams signed it, with the exception of 23XI and for our motorsports. You had to think something was going to be cooking up here. And here's this statement, from this lawsuit. It says the France family and NASCAR are monopolistic bullies, and bullies will continue to impose their will to hurt others until the targets stand up and refuse to be victims. That moment has now arrived. So these teams, 23XI, again, co-owned by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, as well as Front Row Motorsports, another charter team in NASCAR, are pushing back on NASCAR's monopolization of the sport, because the sport is owned by the France family. The sport was founded by Bill France, way back in the 1940s. It was passed down to his son, Bill France Jr., eventually down to his son, Brian France, who was removed several years ago. It's now CEO'd by Jim France, who is the brother of Bill France. But it's owned by one family. They own a majority of the racetracks. They now own the supply chain of the new car that NASCAR runs, because it's a spec car, and they tell the teams, okay, You have to run this car. You have to use these specific parts made by these specific manufacturers that we approve to run these races. And these cars are not viable to race in any other racing series because it's all owned by NASCAR. So, and we talk about antitrust laws quite a bit when it comes to the NCAA and NIL and all that kind of stuff. And the pushback on this lawsuit is essentially saying that NASCAR is preventing these teams from fulfilling their earning potential because they are keeping them in such a box with this monopoly type of standard that NASCAR runs. Again, it's a lot of legal stuff, a lot of jargon that I don't want to get into or confuse or anything like that. But this is something that's going to stay in the news cycle for a while, especially when you have somebody as high profile as Michael Jordan involved in it, because he just garners news anyway. But this is a pretty historic moment, and this could change the structure of how the longest tenured racing league in America is run and what it means for the relationship between the series and its teams. Because for a long time, it was kind of an authoritative dictatorship where the France family said whatever and everybody had to go along with it. Now the teams are trying to get a little bit more power. I don't know who wins this. I think the teams have a pretty good case, personally. But this is going to play out over the course of a while. Going to be a lot of legal fighting, and what it does for NASCAR's reputation, I don't know, because I think back to the IRL kart split of the late 90s, which is something similar to this. Not exactly the same, very similar, and I'm not going to get into that. You can dive into the rabbit hole later if you want to, but that completely damaged open wheel racing in America basically forever, for the most part. And hopefully that doesn't happen here with NASCAR, but very big news coming out today with that lawsuit levied against NASCAR in reference to antitrust with its charter agreement. We'll continue on with what's trending at 2. I want to dive into this. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'll get back into it again. The SEC and the Big Ten are really trying to flex their muscle when it comes to control in college football. And that includes potentially the future of the college football playoff. I'll tell you what I mean by that coming up next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyra and Terry Ford along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Continuing on with what is trending at 2. This may have slid under your radar a little bit as it was coming away from the weekend. But the SEC and the Big Ten, we've known that they are collaborating. I forget what the exact phrase they used with, but it was not an alliance, that silly thing that the other 3 conferences in the Big Ten tried to cook up a couple years ago during COVID. It's not that, but the SEC and the Big Ten, I think, looked at each other recently and said, hey, we're kind of the 2 biggest dogs in this business. Why don't we work together? And that can be beneficial for both of us. So that's what they're doing. And they have a meeting coming up next week in Nashville where all the ADs as well as the conference commissioners are supposed to get together to discuss a few things. This is per Heather Dinich of ESPN. Among them will be a scheduling agreement, which will potentially, work towards, all right, Alabama and Ohio State may play in the regular season, and Georgia and Michigan and teams like that. Which, hey, that's cool. Might also further push the SEC towards implementing 9 conference games, which I'm very much a fan of. I think that all conferences across college football should operate on a uniform standard of 9 conference games. It's kind of weird that the SEC and the ACC don't do that, while the other 2 power leagues do. So that's something that I think most people aren't going to be opposed to. But something else is the future of the college football playoff model itself. If you don't remember, earlier on this year, the college football playoff and ESPN agreed to extend through the 2031-2032 season for a value of $7.8 billion. A lot of money, obviously. In order to make this deal, the other conferences, the ACC, the Big 12, the Group of 5, and Notre Dame, because they're an independent, all had to agree to allow a certain amount of power to the SEC and the Big Ten, which is why we talked so much earlier on this year about the debate back and forth in reference to what the actual model of the 12-team playoff was going to be with AQs and all that kind of stuff. And there was initially a push for, a handful of AQs for the SEC and the Big Ten, and then a couple for the other conferences that ultimately ended up getting shot down. But now that they wield a little bit more power, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to try and push, allegedly, according to Heather Dinich of ESPN, for 4 automatic qualifying spots for their respective conferences in what is potentially an expanded playoff starting in 2026. The decision on whether it's 12 or 14 has not yet been decided. A lot thought that it will go to 14 just to add 2 more games into it. Is the prevailing thought on this overall. So if if that happens, we are talking about these 2 leagues automatically getting over half the field controlling half the field, at least, in the expanded playoff, where no matter how good or bad the SEC or the Big Ten is, if you're 4th in the SEC, even if you're 8-4, you get in, right? And I'll say this, from a business standpoint, I completely understand what the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to do here. You have the ability, you have the power to do something that's going to benefit your business the most and generate you more money, more revenue, all those kind of things. I completely understand. I don't like it, but I get where they're coming from and what they're trying to do, because Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten respectively, are trying to help the bottom line of their company, in this case a conference, and by guaranteeing you get 4 of your teams in every single year, that helps your company out. Now, what that means for the ACC and the Big 12, they might get 2 automatic qualifiers. And look, more often than not, are the SEC and the Big Ten going to probably have more teams that qualify for the college football playoff? Yeah. But I don't like this idea of this locked number, right? Saying, well, every single year it's always going to be 4 SEC teams no matter what. Because, you might have one year where all those teams are double-digit winners and they've all beaten each other to some degree and certainly deserve to be in the playoff, but there's going to be other years, and maybe this can happen in the Big Ten too, where your fourth team's 8-3 or 8-4 or 9-3, and those 3 losses may be bad losses, and they don't warrant being in a playoff spot. But with automatic qualifiers, they'd be in regardless. I don't buy that. In fact, for the entire playoff, 4, 12, 14, 16, or however many it may be, I am always, always, always going to be a supporter of no automatic qualifiers. Now, the way they did it this year with the, only the 4 conference champions get buys and locked in, okay, if you're going to have AQs, that's probably the least offensive way to do it. But as we expand this out, as we start saying, all right, well, these conferences have so many guaranteed lock-ins, that's not what I'm here for. That to me really changes college football in a bad way, because yes, the SEC and the Big Ten are the best conferences more often than not. But I still think you got to earn those spots. And I'd much rather take 1 through 12 just straight up ranked no matter what. There's a provision with the AQs to throw a group of 5 team in there, but in my feeling on this, I've said this before, if you're a group of 5 team that should be competing for a national championship, you'd probably be in the top 10 or top 12 anyway, right? And I think the committee just intentionally in years past hasn't really cared a lot about how they rank group 5 teams. They'll just throw one a bone and put them at 19th and say, okay, you're going to go to the Cotton Bowl or whatever it may be. They do have to take it more seriously now because that highest ranked one does get in the college football playoff. But I just think it's trending down the path to continue to create this separation. And we've said this before. I think the day of the SEC and the Big Ten breaking away and doing their own thing is not impossible to see on the horizon. But I think having this power and taking this kind of step to where you're just automatically saying every single year, well, yeah, our conference is going to be better than yours anyway, so we're just going to hog more spots in the playoff. I don't like the precedent that sets, and I don't like what that means for the future of college football specifically. I just think it's a really bad look and something that locally here and in Big Ten country you may not be opposed to because it doesn't really affect you that much. But if I'm at an ACC school, it's like, well, got to go through these 8 SEC or Big Ten teams to, get where I want to go, and I'm just being guaranteed one spot as the ACC. Well, what's the point? I'm being overpowered here. I could see the frustration with that. Again, this is not confirmed or guaranteed they're going to do this. They're meeting next week in Nashville, and this is going to be a point of discussion, if nothing else. But I personally hope this is something that does not come to pass with whatever the future of the college football playoff is going to be. But again, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to do what they can to help themselves from a purely business standpoint. It is October 2nd, greatest day in the history of the world. Coming up next on your Wednesday, Tyler Head and Terry Ford on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyrad and Terry Ford along with you on your Wednesday. Here on the game, it is indeed time for the greatest day in the history of the world. And we do like to look back on the oldest thing that's happened on this day. Today we go back to 1876. At British Open men's golf, St. Andrews, Bob Martin wins with fellow Scott Davy Strath refuses to take part in a playoff after the pair finished on 176. So Bob Martin winning the British Open at St. Andrews back in 1876 for our throwback for the day.
That's a
Greatest
good
day in
one.
the history of the world.
That's a good one. The other one was this is when the Seattle Pilots became an expansion team in Major League Baseball in 1969. Guess how long that lasted? A year.
Wow.
Then they became the Milwaukee Brewers. What's interesting about that, real quick, is two things. A, that the American League didn't really, you know how they go through so much today to find owners?
Uh-huh.
Like they're looking for dudes, and plus a lot of like billionaires step up wanting to own teams.
Of course.
Well, obviously it wasn't like that back then. And the American League went and scouted Seattle to find an owner, and they really didn't scout hard. They just found a dude who, I'd like to own the team. What do you got in the bank? Yeah, $12.42. Okay, good enough. The guy they went to own the team didn't go, ready for this,
Okay.
didn't go out of his way to scout local investors either.
Okay.
So this thing was a dumpster fire. And it lasted 1 year, ended up in bankruptcy court. The guys that owned it, couldn't pay the bills. And so they decided to relocate the team and sell it. Ended up in Milwaukee, and it was sold to a dude named Bud Selig.
I'd still take that owner over the guy out in Oakland.
Oh, absolutely.
Fisher.
And he's got bazillions of dollars, but he's got no soul.
I read a deep dive the other day about the guy that owns the Pirates, Bob Nutting.
Rich like no one's business.
They call him Bottom Line Bob because
Yep.
he's the ultimate cheapskate.
He is the guy is worth. He's one of, I think, the 10.
Yeah, he's
if you
in
go
the
by
top
net
10.
worth, he's in the top 10 in Major League Baseball.
Because they're already speculating like, well, can't wait to see Paul Skeens in a different uniform in 3 years.
We were joking about this the other day. Where's Paul Skeens going to be in about 3-4 years? He's not going to be in Pittsburgh.
Right.
That dude's not paying Paul Skeens.
No.
The guy, this is the thing that gets me. Again, here's a guy who is, he's got more money than some countries. Doesn't want to spend it on the baseball team. He's a bottom line dude, spreadsheets. He's got budget. Look, I get you don't want to spend trillions of dollars, but you've got to, if you are going to buy a professional sports franchise, you've got to understand that this is not a moneymaker.
No.
Your money, the money you're going to make is when you sell it.
Yeah, if you're making money, you probably suck.
Yeah, exactly, because you're not spending the money you need to spend to make the best product possible. So when you get a guy like this, there should be something in place to where if you are a cheapskate like this guy in Pittsburgh, and you're a cheapskate for multiple years, and you've shown everyone you're not spending the money to be good, and two, you're taking money that's being put out there by the big market owners, and you're not reinvesting it in your team.
Well, and at the end of the day, it's a middle finger to the fans.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
it is.
you're not giving your team a chance to be competitive because you're not willing to spend money on players that are competent.
Like that guy in Oakland and the guy in Pittsburgh who are worth so much money and won't spend the dough. Not only, it's even worse than the middle finger. They don't care about fans.
Yeah.
This is a pure business transaction, and you can't have guys like that owning sports franchises because. Again, ready? Well, like this goof in Charlotte, Tepper. Do you think 75, 80,000 people show up at Tepper's other businesses to watch the employees work?
No.
No. It's different. If you run this like you're running any of your other businesses, you need to get out of the sports franchise business. This guy in Pittsburgh, hey, bro, if you can't spend the money to be competitive, you need to go. And, but here's the problem. This is like a good old boys network with these owners, right? They don't want to shine down on their own.
No, of course not.
No. So they'll put up with this nonsense.
Well, they are the ones that have to approve them buying the team in the first place.
Right.
I imagine there's some vetting to learn what these guys are about. Oh, this guy's kind of a kind of a cheapskate. Yeah, he can go on the Pirates.
He's got billions of dollars.
And also, think about it from this perspective. If you have a team that sucks, well, that's one less team I got to worry about.
Right. Keep them sucking.
Especially if they're in your division. Oh, yeah, please let this guy continue to own the team and not pay for talent. I will happily take my, 10 out of 13 wins a year against them.
I mean, think about what a disaster Daniel Snyder was. Mm-hmm. Not just the fact the Redskins, well, Commanders, whatever they are.
Washington football team.
Yes, cratered under Snyder. He took one of the best franchises in the NFL and made it a punchline. So forget the on-the-field thing, which is bad enough. Think about the culture he had within that organization. Think about the lawsuits and the stories women had about that culture. And not just that, but the way he treated employees, forget male, female, whatever.
Yeah.
It was awful.
He let crap rain down on the fans in FedEx Field.
Horrid what went on there.
Yeah.
They didn't get rid of him.
No.
Finally, they had no choice once the feds and all this other stuff started coming out.
It took a mountain of evidence to move him out.
They finally went, you see the meeting, right, Danny?
Yeah.
We hate to run you out, Danny, because you know you're in the club. But Danny, come on, man. We got no choice. And then Danny got penalized by making how much money off of that sale?
I don't even remember.
Remember?
Because and that's the funny thing that happens. Because yes, you can force them to sell the team. Like Donald Sterling, when he got forced to sell the Clippers, it's like $2 billion.
Oh boy, Donald learned a lesson.
Oh, he's crying about that.
Right.
One. You sure taught him.
Wow, I only made how much of 100% profit on my investment? Well, Bud Selig, when he bought the Pilots, $10 million. When he sold the Brewers, what were they worth? And the Brewers aren't even a big market team. Think of the money Bud Selig made when he sold the Brewers.
Oh yeah, totally.
Just saying. That's the thing. Once you're in the club, you're in the club. And like Daniel Snyder, boy, you taught Daniel Snyder a lesson about being a good human being.
He had to go out and buy a whole new vacation home somewhere.
How many islands did Daniel Snyder buy after he got his check from selling the Washington football team?
There's no perfect way to do it because they do own the thing. You can't just take it from them. Like they do have to sell it for something.
But that's the bylaws that kill you, is the idea that, you should, because you're supposed to wink, wink, care about the fans, because without the fans, you're not making all this money.
Right.
But the reality is, honestly, they don't care about the fans. If they did, they'd run these bad owners out.
Right.
They don't run bad owners out. It just shows you once again the 144th example of how the fans really don't matter?
Pretty much. Well, and especially in today's world where gate revenue is nothing.
Oh, especially the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL, there's a reason the NFL got rid of blackouts, because it doesn't matter if you show up to games. Nobody could show up to the Falcons-Buccaneers tomorrow night for Thursday night, and the NFL would not care because they're making billions off of that TV deal with Amazon.
By the way, the NFL teams all have at least broke even or made a profit before a ticket's sold now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and every sport's gone that way, where it used to be, hey, we got to make sure we get butts in the seats, got to make sure people are showing up. That's why you had all those crazy, theme night, disco demolition and those kind of things, because they wanted you to come to the game. And yes, you could watch games on TV, but that wasn't the end-all be-all. Now TV is so big, that's all that matters. Whatever the big TV contract they've signed, that's where your money's coming from.
Well, the funny part, too, is like fans always say, I pay your salary. In the NFL, no, you don't anymore. You really don't. No, you don't.
Not anymore.
All right, greatest day in the history of the world. Couple interesting ones. Sammy Sosa on this day in 2001 becomes the first player in Major League history with 360 home run seasons. We pretend like they don't even exist now. Wonder why.
Funny.
Interesting. 1994, Don Shula's Miami Dolphins beat the Cincinnati Bengals 23-7. You're like, who cares? Well, the Bengals head coach was Dave Shula, Don Shula's son. It was the first meeting ever between a father and son in professional sports coaching.
Trying to think of other times when that could have happened.
Think about that. Never had happened before 1994.
Yeah. Has it?
I'm trying to think, has it happened since? I guess Kyle and Mike Shanahan didn't do it.
No.
Because Kyle didn't become a head coach till Mike was done.
Right.
I can't think of any other one off the top of my head.
Can't either.
That could happen since 1994. But yeah, Don and Dave Shula. By the way, Dave Shula's coaching career not as good as Don's.
I was going to say, Pop's got the last laugh on that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe didn't even shake his hand at midfield. Coach, son, your team sucks.
Son, you did get that degree. What was your degree in? Obviously not coaching. 1994. We'll run out on this one. Put this through your head.
Okay.
In 1994, North Carolina women's soccer team had a scoreless tie against Notre Dame in overtime. That snapped North Carolina's women's soccer team's 92-game winning streak.
Wow.
Yeah. Old Coach Doran said, North Carolina. Just go with the college sports in general. One of the great dynasties in college sports, women's soccer in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to watch women's college soccer to know about what North Carolina has been in its history. And that 92-game run is among their legacy there for
Yeah,
sure.
he just recently retired, too.
Yeah.
Was it after this year? Was it after this past season? I think he just recently retired. I think.
One of these past couple of years.
Yeah. Dorrance, what he did there. I know there's there's an off the field issue, but he, as a soccer coach, what he did, they won like 10 in a row or something crazy, national championships. He looks at Gino Ariema and says, "Hold my beer."
That's it? That's
That's all you got?
Hold on. Let's see. NCAA tournament championships 82, 83, 84, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 96, 97, 99, 2000, 03, 06, 08, 09, 2012. So, did you get all that?
Yes. That's how good that guy. I mean, seriously, that dynasty is unbelievable.
Yep.
What Dorrance did at North Carolina with women's. Mia Hamm played for him.
Yep.
Among others that were really good. So, yeah, that ended the 92-game win streak with a scoreless tie in overtime against Notre Dame. All right, greatest day in the history of the world. 803-404-6100, our Firehouse Sub text of the hour is next. Also, we'll do our little handoff, sponsored by Little Pigs on Alpine with Jay, and get the postgame show going with Jay and Elijah. All that's coming up here on the game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. Oh, time for our Firehouse Sub text here, 803-404-6100. Jay Phillips is hanging. You want to turn that on? There you go.
When I listen to the Beatles.
Yeah, well, you got a stereo at home? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. You can listen to it when you get
But
home?
they're playing right now.
Yeah,
All
well,
right, go ahead, do your thing. Whatever. It's fine. Fine. I don't even know why I'm here. If we can't listen to the Beatles or the Zeppelin when they play, it's fine. How's it going, Tyler?
It's going good. Hopefully tonight fares a little better. My optimism wasn't super high last night.
I mean,
Last night, the Atlanta Braves, this is not a criticism. The Atlanta Braves looked like a team that had played 5 games in 4 days and then had to fly 2,000 and something miles to play the next day against the team that is arguably currently the hottest team in baseball. That's what the Braves looked like last night.
I don't know where you got that from. I mean, and then you're starting, and you have no starting pitcher
No, yeah.
because of the circumstances you ran into.
AJ,
right.
AJ did all he could.
It's very rare that a team, because they do the celebration in the locker room with the champagne or whatever. They're like, hold on, guys, don't get too crazy.
don't
we gotta
drink.
play a game in
we got a
24
game in
hours
24 hours.
and fly across the country in the process.
But, look, you got Fried on the mound today. It gives you a puncher's chance. Padres have been playing well, but it's a nice pitcher's ballpark. We always get all crazy from game to game. It's the old saying, momentum's the next day starting pitcher. Musgrave is a good pitcher. Fried, if he's right, though, can get you set up to where maybe you can get some runs early and you won't be kicking into what you did in game one.
I mean, they looked
tired, man.
They were listless. I mean, they looked like exactly what had happened, and that's where they are. So yeah, that's easy. I told Elijah earlier, it's really easy for the Braves tonight. Win.
That's all you do at this point. But I heard this stat, which doesn't bode well for any of us our teams lost game one. I guess in the last couple of years, the team that wins game one in these best of threes has won 7 of the last 8 or something like that.
Yep.
So, you just hope in your case with the Braves, you have Fried hold down San Diego and get some runs.
Yes.
I mean, you put a goose egg up like my Orioles did.
Yes.
A goose egg's tough you can't win a game when you score no runs.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, yesterday, I guess the Mets and Brewers scored runs, but other than that, I mean, Houston scored 1 run, and the Braves and Orioles got shut out.
Yeah.
So.
And the other thing too with San Diego, they got something rare in the postseason. Well, the ironic part, the Orioles got it too, and they lost. A starting pitcher who was dominant. And Michael King, who, by the way, was in the Juan Soto trade. King, struck out 12 Braves in like 7 innings.
Braves couldn't swing their bats. I mean, the bats are too heavy.
Well, that's from traveling.
It's just
back it's heavy.
They got the wrong kind of bats.
Back it's heavy.
At least
They should have gotten Ray Tanner's bat warmers, and Jack Liggett could have gotten mad.
At least it
Kidding.
didn't prolong the game. It was right at a tight 2 hours. So
That was like the Oriole game, 2 hours and 25 minutes. If you're going to lose
If it
quick.
wasn't going to be competitive, at least they got it out of the way quick.
Man. Corbin Burns pitched in the 9th inning, by the way, for the Orioles. You know the last time a starting pitcher pitched into the 9th inning of a playoff game?
Jim Palmer.
Close. Cy Young. 1910. It feels like it, right? It's been. Was it 2000? It's been like 4. It's been a few years since a pitcher has actually towed the rubber. A starting pitcher in the 9th inning of a playoff game.
Well, I like Max's chance tonight. We'll see.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all. I mean, listen, it really is that simple. Go. I mean, go win the baseball game. The Braves are now faced with their second must-win game in 48 hours.
Well, the thing because the circumstances they ran into, and because Chris sailed. And so now you're scrambling. You were going to be scrambling anyway to a point because of the way this thing ended the season. Because if Sale was healthy, he's throwing game 2 of the doubleheader, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would have been scrambling for game 1 and mostly throwing an opener anyway.
Yeah.
So really, you were just hoping you could score some runs and win like a slugfest. Obviously, that didn't happen. But now you've got Fried on the mound for game 2, which will set you guys up a lot better.
And if you can advance, then I guess Lopez can go tomorrow, Tyler. Or Charlie.
It's Charlie.
Yeah,
it would be
probably
Charlie.
When did Lopez pitch Saturday?
Remember, Lopez pitched in the doubleheader. That's his day, his throw day. He threw an inning.
One of the games on Monday. I can't remember which one.
Because they brought him in because that was his throw day.
Yeah.
So he just came out and threw an inning. So that
must have been in game 2.
Because I think.
See, I didn't have all my power back yet then. Because I was back at the house. I didn't stay here to watch.
That's right. You were lighting things on fire and.
Yes.
Because you had no electricity or cable or internet.
Mr. Phillips, did the tree hit your roof? No, man, we had a fire at the house. Why'd you have a fire then? Well, I had to see and cook.
That's right. My phone died, and I couldn't use the
So I guess
flashlight.
Charlie
Yeah.
could go tomorrow?
Yeah, Charlie and then Lopez would be game.
Lopez
one.
threw 15 pitches on Monday in
Right.
game 2.
Yes, he can't come back for. He would probably be game 1 if you got to the NLDS. Would be my guess.
Yeah, I don't care what you got to do tomorrow because, again, tomorrow is going to be must win if you
Absolutely.
win today. But you got to win today
Today's
first.
must win, right?
So just go get it done, Matt.
You know, we were talking about this. We brought this up yesterday. Look, if this ends tonight, think of everything that the Braves had to navigate to get to the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Not only did you have all the injuries, Tyler and I talked about this. Besides Ozuna, everybody else, their offensive production cratered from last year. Not just went down a little bit or didn't just come down to the norm or the median, cratered.
Well, Matt Olson
compared to
started
last year.
swinging at everything again, and again, he wasn't getting the pitches that he needs. So it's kind of like that last year of his in Oakland.
Well, Acuna Jr., before he got hurt,
He
wasn't
was
doing
not,
a whole lot.
He was not doing well.
How about Murphy? Murphy's shaking hands with Mario Mendoza at 199
again,
or whatever.
the Kelnick bat never
Yeah,
got going.
it's-
Michael Harris was slumping until then. And when he got hurt, he came back and he was
Yeah,
okay.
Riley got on a hot streak, then got hurt.
And then he got done for the year.
Kind of the signature of the team this year. unfortunately.
Exactly. What do you got coming up?
A lot of football and our buddy Pete Iacobelli from the AP.
Very nice. Post-game show come next. Tyler, nice work, my friend. We'll do the halftime show again tomorrow here on The Game.